coming off at the end of the previous chapter, Ryu had defeated Uro and Okkotsu had defeated Kurorushi, so it came down to the two of them, in their final face-off, very reminiscent to how Okkotsu was facing off with Geto at the end of Volume 0. And that brings us to the opening exposition of this chapter, where it says, Yuta can only release a directed high-output blast of cursed energy while Rika is completely manifested, even at full power. However, it is slightly weaker than Ishigori's blast, so he needed to rapidly build up cursed energy and fire before his opponent reached maximum power. So that makes sense, and I guess it goes back to the original exposition that we got on Ryu, when it said that he had the highest cursed energy output of all the players. Again, I don't know if that just meant Sendai Colony, or if it just meant the entire Culling game, but considering that it's been confirmed multiple times that he surpasses Okkotsu in this field, I guess Ryu really does have the highest output of all of the players. But going further, it says that was his intention. Like quickly firing off a blast before Ryu can go to maximum power, taking away Ryu's advantage, but the intense look in Ishigori's eyes expressed over 400 years of hunger and thirst. So that's super interesting for multiple reasons. So first of all, this is kind of like showing that Okkotsu is appeasing Ryu here when he really shouldn't, but he's feeling, empathy for him, because this is like his purpose in life, I suppose. Like I said many times, he's kind of like a Saiyan, where he's hungering to be tested to his full limits, wanting his dessert, which he's never had. And since Ryu isn't like a full-blown unredeemable villain, he's kind of like a tweener at this point. Okkotsu, being the nice guy that he is, kind of like, okay, I'll appease you, I'll give you your dessert, but just this once. Now another thing is the 400 years of hunger and thirst. I don't know if this was revealed earlier, maybe I missed it, but I think this is the first time we're getting insight into how old Ryu is. Now I initially suspected that he was like from the 40s or 50s or something because of his rockabilly aesthetic and his comfortability with cigarettes and how he visualizes, contemporary desserts and things like that. But I guess this means that he's from over 400 years ago. And 400 years ago is also mentioned by Kashimo, one of the other big players in the Culling game, who we're probably going to see in action in the next Colony stretch of chapters. I'll talk about that at the end of the video. But if Kashimo and Ryu come from the same era, why didn't they fight each other? Why didn't Kashimo give Ryu his dessert? But Kashimo also asks, like, where's Sukuna? And since we know that Sukuna comes from the Golden Age, like, over 1,000 years ago or whatever, maybe that was the incentive that Kenjaku gave to Kashimo to join the Culling games. Like, hey, if you join this game, you'll be teleported to the future and Sukuna will be there and you'll get to fight him. But anyway, their cursed energy blasts converge and this excites Ryu, and he's like, here's an idea, let's go again. And Okkotsu has Rika fire her own individual blast, but at the same time Okkotsu like leaps at him to attack him while he's being distracted, like deflecting the blast. And Ryu realizes this, and it says, in addition to domain expansion and this meal with me, I don't think you can replenish very fast. This is in reference to the previous two chapters where Ryu, Uro, and Okkotsu all simultaneously activated their domain expansions, which of course is super draining on your cursed energy and also hinders your cursed technique ability, for some time afterwards. And at the end of the previous chapter, it told us that like Okkotsu's cursed technique hadn't replenished yet. And we were kind of speculating like, oh, does that mean that Okkotsu's not really going to be able to measure a substantial counterattack here because of that? Or is this kind of just a red herring and he's actually going to replenish it within moments after this? And yeah, it turns out that that's the case. It was kind of a red herring just to put the reader on edge, kind of raise the stakes a little bit, because it says Yuta's curse technique had already replenished. And as Ryu like fires off a granite blast point blank at him, Okkotsu warps space and deflects the beam into the air. And when I first read this, I got hyped, and I'm sure you did too. And then Ryu's like, was that Uro's curse technique? I didn't think he was a mere curse speech user. I thought that big thing had a curse technique of its own, but I was wrong. Okkotsu's curse technique is copy, but there must be a major condition for it. So when did he satisfy it? When I wasn't looking? Surely it isn't conditionless. And this is kind of what has been going through my, and I'm sure everyone else's mind regarding Okkotsu's curse technique. Or at least his ability to copy others, because we've never seen him fulfill a condition or anything. It's always been ambiguous. And then Ryu says back then, and he remembers Rika eating Uro's arm. So I guess that's it. So either Rika consuming the body part of a sorcerer or their blood is the condition for Okkotsu to receive their curse technique. So maybe it's not consuming the flesh, but more so the blood of a sorcerer. Because we know that he copied Drew's curse technique, and as far as we saw, he didn't like lop off any of his body parts or anything, but he did draw blood from him. Now, as for him getting cursed speech from Inumaki, that's a little more subtle, but in volume 0, after Geto like whoops him up, he is bleeding from the mouth, and Rika does grab him and the others in her like jujitsu bag or whatever, and then dumps him off so that Okkotsu can reverse curse technique them. So maybe it was at that moment that Rika absorbed Inumaki's blood, or maybe Okkotsu did, and that's how he was able to use curse speech. Also, I don't know what the hive mind's opinion on this is and what they've all universally accepted as the correct opinion. So maybe everyone has already figured out what the right answer is. I just don't know. I'm just taking some guesses here. But it seems like it's blood consumption possibly, which is similar to what Toga does in My Hero. And interestingly enough, this is like the popular theory on what Sukuna's inherent curse technique could actually be. That like he eats other sorcerers or something and gains their curse techniques. Now obviously not confirmed yet. We hardly really know anything about Sukuna. And I don't know if this means that there's a connection between the Michizanis and Sukuna and Okkotsu, but Uro seems surprised that Okkotsu's ability was copy. And considering that she was the one who accused him of being a Michizani, wouldn't she already know that their curse technique was copy if it is something that Okkotsu would inherit from them? But anyway, Okkotsu does Uro's thin icebreaker to Ryu, and then immediately just hammers him on the head with Rika. But Ryu, being the beast that he is, immediately comes back and just levels her again. And it says that a single blow was too much for Rika, even when completely manifested, would cause her to reach her limits. For some reason, I really like that Ryu is just a super powerhouse. But then they go more into hand-to-hand combat, and Ryu is like finally satisfied. He's like, this is my dessert. Then Okkotsu like hunches down and grabs Ryu by his jacket, almost like he's gonna do like a judo move or something. And he's like, we're done. And the granite blast that he deflected earlier using Uro's curse technique comes down and lands right on Ryu. And he's seemingly finished by this, and he says, thank you. My stomach's now full. And we see like the dessert plates are empty now. And that's the end of the chapter. So I'm assuming that this is like it. And the way that Ryu looks here is making me think that he's going to give his points to Okkotsu. So I think that Ryu had like 77 points and Okkotsu has like 40 or something like that. So he'll be able to make one rule chain if this does happen. And a couple chapters back, he said that there was like 2 rules that needed to be made first and foremost. One was like the ability to move between barriers, and the other was for like a means of communication. And I wonder which one Okkotsu's going to make. So I assume maybe the movement between barriers, but also means of communication would be very useful as well. But if this is the end of the Sendai colony portion here, I'm guessing we're going to come to the second Tokyo barrier with Hikari and Panda, because Hikari pretty much said that he's going after Kashimo because he's perceived to be like the biggest threat or the strongest. And he also said that Panda should go find Angel, but obviously we saw a couple chapters back that Angel had found Megumi. So I'm guessing we're just going to come to Hikari, maybe taking on Kashimo next. But let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments, guys. And if you liked it, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you next one.